After 22 years as racing manager for Juddmonte, Teddy Grimthorpe will be stepping down after Royal Ascot, and he will continue to be involved in racing through his beloved York racecourse and as deputy senior steward of the Jockey Club. Throughout his time working for the late Prince Khalid Abdullah, he has had the privilege of working with many of Juddmonte's champions, and he casts his mind back to the glory days of Frankel, Enable, and so many more.
My father owned and bred horses, including Mrs. McCarty, who won the 1000. And so I was brought up in a sort of fairly horsey fashion. I don't think he would call it, but I did ride out for Jimmy Fitzgerald. I don't think on the Malton Gallops. I think when I was still at school, and I went to Lindsay Park in South Australia in the sort of mid-70s. And from there, I think I spent a year there and sort of pretty much knew that I wanted to get in the horse business when I came back. So I worked on the National Stud course, and then I worked at Nidri Stud in Virginia, and then I started work for the BBA, and I worked there for, funny enough, 22 years. Pritchard Gordon was stepping down. I saw him in July, I should think it was, and I said, "Oh, what's happening with your job?" He said, "Are you interested?" So I said, "Yeah, given the right circumstances, yeah." And there were a few more sort of questions, and mainly a bit later on, Philip Mitchell asked me, and then Grant asked me again if I was still interested, and said the Prince would like to meet you. And I went to meet the Prince in the middle of December sales, on the Sunday of December sales, and I didn't know what to expect. I mean, in terms of, I didn't know if he was interviewing lots of other people. But anyway, he welcomed me into his office and said, "I'm just here to welcome you to the club." So I thought that was a pretty good job interview, really. But it was typical of Prince Khalid. Of course, he'd done a little bit of research on me, or I imagine he had. And so it started from there. You know, I always said I've been incredibly spoiled at Juddmonte. So, especially with the horses, and of course the people as well, the trainers. Watching work is, you get the sort of likes of Frankel I mean, some very good horses don't show much or don't show a lot at home, whereas Frankel put it on the line practically every morning. And so he rather ruined work watching for every other horse, really. And I was asked if I bet much, and I said, well, if you'd seen Expert Eye work before the Dewhurst, I would, and I was a betting man, I'd be a pauper now. I'd still be paying off the debt. But I love to see the horses. I love to see them moving well. And of course, you don't always know what stage the horses that they're working with are at. Some might have done more, some might have been less. So what looks a disappointing work actually is quite a good work. And then, of course, lads way different. They're different stages of the training program. I mean, I don't think trainers on the whole never match up like for like too much, for all the obvious reasons, as they don't want to do too much at home. The place to be racing is on a racecourse. Of course, the racing is the end product and a vital one, essential one. But I think from an enjoyment point of view, it's the development. It's knowing the stallions, knowing the mares, generations of mares. I mean, when Lucid Dreamer won her maiden, she was a 6th generation Juddmonte bred, and so those sort of things, and knowing the families and growing up with the families and seeing what they produce and what sort of horses and what sort of temperaments, what sort of types, all that sort of thing, and then of course they will go to Ferrens in Ireland and are broken in there, and you just sort of saw them on a regular basis, pretty much, throughout the sort of summer and autumn, to see how they develop, and then really So mainly, so you're in a good position to advise, in my case, Prince Khalid, and of course latterly the family, where they might be best suited. But that was a decision on the whole that Prince Khalid always took. He took a huge amount of trouble on trying to allocate his horses to where he wanted them to go, so it was my job really to give him the background and the facts to help him make these decisions. Henry was not a sort of what he called a stand by your beds man. He slightly pretended to be a bit more informal than he was actually. He took in the yard. Originally, Paddy Rudkin always told me that they thought that he was sort of daydreaming around the yard, but actually, they soon realised that he wasn't daydreaming. He was just taking in all the rhythms, and of course, he had an extraordinary eye. He's very different to John Gosden, who's utterly brilliant. Andre is. His CV is second to none. So where do you go? Obviously, the American side, Bobby Frankel, he was a unique man and had a great depth of thought about the game and how it was run and what the horses wanted. And he had quite a gruff outside, but he had a very soft inside, Bobby. Prince Khalid chose his trainers very, very carefully. It was slotting the right horses to the right person. I think good horses on the whole are going to be good horses with good trainers. But I think when you get to the likes of Frankel, it's hard to think that Frankel wouldn't have been a good horse, a very, very good horse. But I don't think the story would have been so fantastic without that sort of combination. And likewise, Enable and Frankie. It's those sort of dynamics that make it all interesting. Like Andre said, I don't rate my friends, and I always thought that was such a good get out as well, because many of them were really had fantastic stories and great histories from the early days. I mean, Dan Silly was the first of Silly's progeny to hit the racecourse on our first foal. I was always incredibly fond of him, and Prince Khalid certainly had huge faith in him. I always said if things had probably if he'd been better managed, he would have won. He would have won at least 2 Group 1s. But he covered the last quarter mile in the Breeders' Cup Mile in 21 and change, and still finished third. I mean, a half a nose past the post, he was a length clear practically. So it was always frustrating. But Prince Khalid said, we're going to treat him like a Group 1 winner. And so he came back to the stud. So it was a sort of beginning of a dynasty, really. So that was exciting. I think, again, another horse was early days was Wince, who I went through rather a barren period when I started in the job, and we had no winners at all, and it was getting. I thought, what have I done? And Wince actually, when she won the Fred Darling, was the first winner. The first winner that I was in England that I'd managed. So, and she of course went on to win a classic, and but rather strangely, Bionic was the sort of anti-post favourite since she'd won it, bolted up in her maiden at Goodwood the year before, and she injured herself before, but she did a piece of work. Getting back to your work, that she did a piece of work which was pretty mind-tickling on racecourse side, and then she injured herself soon after. But Wince proved a worthy substitute. I think those are sort of characters characters of horses that you not necessarily always the greatest ones, but I always loved Twice Over because he was such a gent. He really was. He was the most mild-mannered, honest, straightforward, wonderful horse. He really was. I was very fond of him. Of course, horses like, sort of famous name that Dermot trained, won 21 pattern races. Was it? Yeah, I think it's 21 pattern races. Extraordinary, really. There and so those sort of horses that are sort of always in your in your life or dominate your life. But going on, I mean, it's sort of 2003 was a fantastic year because Prince Khalid had Nebraska Tornado, who won the Diane, Oasis Dream, who was champion sprinter, and Empire Maker, all in sort of 3 different jurisdictions, almost outstanding horses of their particular generation. So that was exciting. I think you sort of you find saying yourself when you've been asked about the good horses, and you think, God, how on earth did I leave him or her out? And sort of the likes of Midday winning a Breeders' Cup. Kingman, we still can't work out how he got beaten in the 2,000 guineas. But of course, he had redemption, especially at Ascot, but more so, I thought, rarely in the Sussex Stakes, where they went incredibly slowly. Richard Hughes on Toronado went absolute crawl to the top of the hill. And I thought, oh, they made a big mistake here. And then I suddenly realised that John had said to James Doyle, wait until the last possible moment. And so I'm going, I wasn't sure that was such a good idea because they'd gone so slowly. And then Richard suddenly pushed the accelerator on Toronado and went clear. But Kingman's turn of foot that day was really extraordinary. And he ate up the ground. And I never saw the sectionals on that, but they must have been pretty impressive. I mean, Workforce was he didn't go into training until very late in his 2-year-old career, almost as late as anything. But actually, he did win. I mean, he won at Goodwood as a 2-year-old, and Michael put him away. I was getting frightfully excited about what sort of exotic options he might have, but Michael said no. We'll let him just take his time. And of course, he was 100% right. And with Workforce winning the Derby, of course, we had Bullet Train in Frankel's half 3 parts brother in the race, and so Workforce was still a sort of work in progress coming into the Derby, and of course he broke the track record at Epsom that day and won hugely impressively, and sort of fudged his lines in the King George, but Michael brought him back for the Arc, which was an extraordinary training performance to do that, and he had a wonderful ride from Ryan, and things worked out for him really well that time. But he gave us everybody great days. I think everyone from Prince Khalid downwards at Juddmonte was pretty much aware that Frankel had the potential to be something special from a pretty early stage. I mean, even, when we put a saddle on him and he started moving, he made the heart skip a beat, no question about that. And of course, then when he started to deliver, and every time he stepped up, every time he started working, you thought, oh, this might be something. So then he started running, and you're thinking, oh, this could be good. And it sort of it kept on going up the scale, and he never really took a backward step. But I think when he obviously became into racing aficionados when he was 2, and of course the Guineas set him apart as something interesting. But I think he then grew in the public minds because he kept on winning, and therefore it's slightly like a snowball in terms of interest and sporting interest, and he was able to jump outside the back page of the sporting pages. I remember talking to Prince Khalid about what might happen in terms of the horse and everything, and Henry at that stage was undergoing his cancer treatment, and so was mentally unbelievably strong, but physically quite frail. And Prince Khalid said to me, he said, "I want you to take this on. I don't want Henry to be under any pressure, in terms of the press and the publicity and all that." And he said, I want you to do it and take the pressure off Henry as far as that goes. So that's really how the sort of first part of the equation fell into gear. And then, of course, we talk about him often and endlessly. But I did say to him once, I said, you do realise you're going to have to share this horse now with the wider world. And he was a very private, personal man, Prince Khalid, and so it was, and he'd always kept it like that with his horses, but he certainly understood that this was going to have to happen, and he was fully on board because he realized what a phenomenon he was for the whole racing business, and he was a great major story of an alpha male, and the story of Henry and him are obviously two great stories individually, but together they made for a massive story. I think I was always asked a lot about pressure. I always like to think that it's mainly self-initiated pressure. You put it on yourself rather than people putting it on you. And I always felt that when you're making or help make the decisions on whether they stay in training. I think there's always the same questions you ask yourself. Is she sound? Is she happy? Has she got targets? What's the program? And most importantly, what does the owner want to do? That is, if they tick the first few boxes, if the owner doesn't want to race them on or do it, it's entirely their call. So I think with Enable, she was the most extraordinary lady. She wanted to do it. I mean, she wanted to know why she wasn't being fed first in the morning, why she wasn't going out first thing, or why she wasn't cantering first, or why she wasn't galloping. She was the most vociferous, extraordinary person like that. And of course, so she pretty much told us what she wanted to do. Well, she told John first, obviously. And so from that point of view, it was something that the Prince Khalid and the family enjoyed really. And it would differ, with the mare, you're talking about 1 or 2 foals for an extra year's racing or so. But for a stallion, you might be talking about 300 foals, which is a little bit different. And also, there isn't the commercial pressure, because it wasn't as if the family or Prince Khalid were going to sell Enable. She was always going to come back to the stud. So I think the target of a third arc, a big enough carrot, to try and I think if you have horses and you have something of the caliber of an Abel, I think to try and test them as much as you can is not unreasonable. And that challenge, it's like there's always stories. She had 2 arcs in which, I mean, her first arc at Chantilly, the manoeuvres that Frankie made in the first 400 or 500 meters were absolutely copybook. I mean, he did everything right, and he made it look easy, which is what she did in the end. And in the second arc at Longchamp, she'd had that very interrupted program, and she just held on. So it gave everyone the confidence, I suppose, that it could be done. A third one would have been possible. People always felt that we should make excuses for her not winning the third arc, and I felt it wasn't that. Just as circumstances turned out, the race, the going, everything else, she literally just got outstayed in the end of it, on that particular day. It was still a pretty enormous performance, and imagine if she hadn't won 2 arcs, you'd be saying, Lord, this filly won 3 King Georges. And that alone would have been enough. I think only 8 horses have won 2 arcs, and no horse has won 3 King Georges. So that the whole to try and put it all into context is a difficult one, because she had that tremendous character and enormous will. On a racecourse, I think there's no doubt for me that sort of 22nd of August 2012 on York Racecourse was it for me for so many reasons. Obviously, Frankel coming, stepping up to 1.25 miles, Prince Khalid's flagship race he'd sponsored for 22, 23 years at that stage, I think. And I was chairman of York Racecourse. So I did think if things went badly, I looked out of my bedroom window about 5 o'clock in the morning at the home in Yorkshire. I thought if things go badly, I could lose the only 2 jobs I've got. But it was an extraordinary day in every possible way, in terms of the crowd. The great Yorkshire crowd came and came in droves, and it was the atmosphere. People were sitting around the paddock from the first race onwards, people coming up to me the whole first thing from arrival onwards, the excitement, the buzz. Prince Khalid came. Henry was determined to come, even though Prince Khalid had said, "You don't need to come." He said, "I'm coming," and he looked very frail that day. But he was determined to come, and the horse delivered. Tom brought him with a great ride, smoothly, to win in the style that everyone had come to see, really, and come to expect. That, as you said before, in terms of expectations with Frankel, they've always been off. I mean, from a very early age, they were always off the wall with him. And he's, amazingly, he's delivered at every stage. I can't remember what age I was when I first went to York, but I was pretty young. I was, I don't know, 10 or 11, I suppose. And the clerk of the course was David Swannell, he didn't live in those days, he didn't, but eventually lived in the same village as us at home in Yorkshire. And so I think that being involved in that, being asked, I succeeded my great friend Nicholas Wrigley as chairman, to be involved with, I think the whole ethos of, I love the ethos of York. It was countless chairman and chief executives who really made it what it is. And of course, William Derby is one of the great racecourse men of the modern era. So having that leadership or executive is very important. But the ethos is that we want people to come racing, and therefore, if you want people to come racing, you've got to deliver first and foremost a very friendly face at the first gate you walk into. Good facilities, so people actually want to have are happy to eat and drink what's on offer. Fantastic horses. To get fantastic horses, you've got to have fantastic prize money. To have fantastic prize money, you've got to have fantastic crowds, and so it goes on. So from that point of view, York embodies that very much. But equally so, if you fall down in one of those, then you fall down in the whole lot, and people understand that. And everybody at York understands that. So it's getting that collective to buy into everything that we're trying to do. Trying to make it better, improve everything. It's a never-ending process.